liking Barra?
It's stunning. Much like all of the Outer Hebrides we've seen so far. Absolutely incredible. This beach down the bottom here is amazing.
Stunning, isn't it?
Don't look at me. Look at where you're going.
I glanced at you.
Look at where you're going. So in 30 seconds then, tell me what you think to Barra and Vatersay.
Stunningly beautiful, particularly down on Vatersay. There's a beach where you've got the road goes down, dunes and just beach either side, and there's about a quarter of a mile between the two. Absolutely beautiful. It's a bit of the whole of the Outer Hebrides all in one island, I think, actually. It's the roads are narrow, very much single track with passing places, and oh, it's lovely. It really, really is.
Didn't mention the airport.
I didn't mention the airport, no. I've gone way over my 30 seconds.
Go on then, 20 seconds on the airport.
The airport, it's apparently the only airport in the world with a runway on a beach. So the flights go in when the tide is out, and the windsocks go up, and that's when you're not allowed on the beach because it becomes the airport. And so, yeah, lovely. We saw a plane come into land and we saw one take back off again as well. So a little prop plane, beautiful.
What are we doing?
Sitting waiting.
What are we waiting for?
Ferry.
To?
Uig. Or Uig. Not entirely sure exactly how you say it, but Skye. Yeah, got here a bit early. Had a nice bit of cake. And, very efficient here. Literally pulled up and they're there going, where's tickets?
They are. So this is the longest time that we've been away in California for, and we haven't finished yet. But that's not what this clip's about. This clip's about the fact that we're in a T6.1. We're used to having a T6. What have you learned about a 6.1 in the however many nights, 10, 11 nights that we've been in it so far?
The computer can do some things that seem a little weird.
The control panel thing.
The T6, if you told it to do something, it did it until you told it not to. So things like the diesel heater, we quite like having it on. Like when we get cold, we're a bit nesh. We put it on, and then we might keep it on for 5 minutes or so when we start driving along, just to keep the cabin warm whilst the engine's warming up before you get some heat actually coming out of the vents. And the T6 did that. Because as I learnt to my cost, when I took it to work one day, I put the heater on. It was a really cold day. Drove into work with it on. It was properly like frosty and snowy and everything. Completely forgot to turn the diesel heater off. Left it in the car park at work for the next 8 hours or however. I opened the door and I got back and it was like 30 degrees. The thing was absolutely steaming. And in this T6.1, as soon as you switch the engine on, the diesel heater goes off and that's it. There's no keeping it on. So yeah, it kind of feels like it just does it. But at least we know it does it now. Whereas we were like, who switched the heater off?
It's not when you switch the ignition on, it's when you drive off. Because we tested this over a couple of days. So you can start it up and the little light's still on. As soon as you start rolling away, that's it. Shuts it off. Which is, now we know, that's good.
That's fine.
Camping mode. So when you figure out exactly what camping mode does in terms of switching things off and everything else, which we have done, and it's probably a whole separate video, or watch the California Chris video, like we don't need to create that. Actually, camping mode is quite useful, but that also switches off as soon as you switch the ignition on and drive away, which again is quite helpful really. So yes, you can switch those things off manually, but you can end up getting quite lazy because you leave a campsite, just switch the engine and go, and actually the stuff which was your camping stuff like the heater and the camping mode and everything just sorts out for you, which is nice. Leveling gauge on here is just
brilliant. Although it can become a bit obsessive. Like, it's 0.5 degrees out. Yeah. If we were sitting here and we didn't have a leveling gauge, you'd be like, it's fine. But you can just sort of find yourself sitting there on a campsite, aimlessly shuffling the van forwards and backwards, staring up at the thing. Stop! Oh, it was 0 at one point, but that must have been when you hit the brakes.
Anything else T6 6.1 related specifically?
I think I'm still going to comment on the bed. Definitely more comfortable.
Yeah.
With the springs.
Yeah, the Frolly springs up in the top bed. We tend to sleep upstairs in the top bed. Yeah, they're excellent, aren't they? I think everything else in here is pretty similar, isn't it? Obviously, the engine too much oil thing is an interesting T6.1 quirk, which either we're going to sort out a separate video on or we'll mention it in one of these, but honestly, that is just a bizarre, just oddity. I think I've about understood through reading all the forums and stuff online exactly what's going on with it, but yeah, we'll talk about that in another video.
Disconcerting to be driving along on a random island where you are miles away from anything and you just get a beep.
Yeah, well, we've come to live with that now, haven't we? We've got expert at checking the oil level on the dipstick. Not that that's particularly difficult.
We've gone through a lot of kitchen roll in checking.
We've finished a box of tissues, haven't we?
Yeah. And a good few sheets of kitchen roll.
Yeah. But I'm starting to feel the love for the little camping panel. I know I've said on other bits of the video and everything else that I don't really like it. I think now I'm learning it and understanding exactly what it's doing, I can possibly start to see the positives. Certainly the leveling gauge is genius. It really does just make life easier when you're on a site if you're particularly sensitive to leveling the van and everything.
It certainly gives you an idea of where to put your ramps.
Yeah,
basically.
And bizarrely, from the last time we did a quick video like this talking about some of our likes and dislikes, actually the fridge that we mentioned in that video, because I think we said it had switched off and we were worried about it. Sorry, there's a chap in front of us who's just got one of those hoverboards out with the single wheel in the middle, and he's just gone out whizzing around on it. I'm quite jealous about that.
Not expecting to see that at Loch Maddie Ferryport.
Yeah, but the fridge hasn't gone off since, so yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, that's all good too. So yeah, we'll see. So
for those of you who have watched all the way from part 1, we thought best to give you a bit of a recap about where we have been. So we started over kind of here-ish in Inverness, drove up to Ullapool and then got the ferry over to Stornoway here. We then actually stayed at a campsite called Eilein Frauk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that's at this point here. Good place for exploring, our first encounter with midges, nice site with some really good facilities. So we then drove all the way down here and we then stayed at a campsite down here which is called Horgabost. This one had some random pricing. Lovely views off the site. No idea what you're going to pay if you manage to turn up and find a pitch, but it's probably going to be somewhere between £15 and £20. Then we got off, we drove down to Leverburgh here, and we caught the ferry over to Stornoway. So I shall just move this up here so that you can still see it. So Stornoway here for the ferry. Then we stayed at a lovely campsite called Barra and Vatersay, which is right over here. That one has some fantastic facilities, really lovely underfloor heated shower blocks. There's a cafe on site in a porter cabin, beautiful and right next to the beach. Really, really lovely. So for those of you again who have watched our previous videos, you'll know why Benbecula is quite special to us. We had a lovely little trip there for our van to the garage. That's this place here. And then we carried on all the way down right to the bottom of South Uist and stayed at a lovely campsite down here called Kilbride. Now, Kilbride is a beautiful little campsite right next to the beach. We had a pitch, we were so lucky, right at the front overlooking the sea, and it was gorgeous. Lovely facilities, absolutely fantastic. We then went on to Eriskay and caught the ferry over to Barra. So at Eriskay and Barra, and we stayed at a wonderful little campsite over here on the east coast called Croft 183. Random, sort of quite laid back, laissez-faire owners. Not entirely sure what the check-in process is, but stonking views from every single one of the pitches. Absolutely lovely. So then, because I tend to get a little bit seasick, there is no way that we were catching the ferry back to Oban from Castle Bay, so we caught the ferry back up to Eriskay, stayed back again at Kilbride, and then drove all the way up here, and we got back to Loch Maddie up here, and we caught the ferry over to Uist at Skye.
So we're about to leave the Outer Hebrides and go off to Skye. So, what do you think of the Outer Hebrides?
Very, very rural. Not a lot here actually, which I was expecting probably a little bit more, probably incorrectly. Really, really beautiful scenery, quite changeable scenery from sort of mountains to sort of coast, beaches, causeways between the islands. Lots and lots of single track roads with passing places for miles on end, and locals that are generally on a bit of a mission down those roads. Yeah, you get out of their way.
It's really pretty. Loads of amazing scenery, so much to see, loads of just incredible beaches everywhere, great dog walking everywhere, nothing like dog bans on beaches or any of that stuff. It's just you know, everything everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Although not particularly dog friendly inside places.
Yeah,
we've not
cafes
really
and stuff.
found many places that we can take Lucy into at all.
No.
Which a little bit strange. Kind of get used to that now on the mainland. We've obviously had her for 15 years now, and it kind of feels like going back in time those 15 years where the answer generally or the default was no, you can't bring your dog in, and that's changed quite a lot on the mainland.
I think for me the couple of highlights I'll remember the most are the beach at Stornoway on the west coast was absolutely incredible.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It's so long, so white, so it's just so gorgeous, and it was raining when we were there, and it was just stunning, absolutely stunning. And there was one other couple on there with a couple of dogs. That was it. It was just deserted
for miles, and it was miles of beach.
Yeah. And the other was the couple of beaches down on Vatersay, which have got a tiny strip of land in between them, but both huge long beaches. Really odd piece of geology which has just created that area, but it's got a road, a bit of verge, a couple of kind of dunes either side, and then they just flow down either side into the bays, and it is just stunning, absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's my couple of memories, definitely. I think if we were talking about what we would do if we came back, and I think we'd probably spend a bit more time in Harris, because around Tarbert and you know, all of the
beaches there were beautiful as well, weren't they?
Yeah. were just absolutely stunning, and probably a bit more time on Barra, because there's quite a few of the shops and cafes and other bits and pieces which were closed when we were there.
We chose a Sunday.
We were there on a Sunday.
Not great.
But it was just so beautiful. I think it definitely could spend more time on Barra.
Yeah.
Definitely. So off to Skye, and we'll see how we get on there.